In this video, we are going to be creating a progress bar with CSS. So you can see it here on the screen. We're going to take a quick look at it in just a moment, and I'll show you which elements of this we're building up, and then we'll just dive straight in and build write the code for this. So we can see here that we've got this like outer shell area, and this is one element in itself, and then we have this fill inside, which is another element. And with this, what you can do is you can go ahead and control the size of this fill. So you can see the fill just in here. At the moment, I have a style attribute on this. Now, this is useful if you want to control this with JavaScript, or you're pulling this from a database and you just want to output it onto the page as a number, percentage. You wouldn't necessarily want to do that with CSS. You could do, but in this case, it's perfectly acceptable to have a style attribute and have this in there. Second of all, when I do change this, you can see that it animates. Let's just watch that again. So if I just pull that away, you can see that animating up as well. So we're using CSS transitions for this. So that's pretty much how it's structured and how it works. Let's go ahead, dive straight into the code. This is very simple to do. Let's go ahead and build this. So we're going to start out with a blank document here. If you don't already have this, go ahead and write it out. And we also have a style sheet linked in here. This is just called app.css, and it's living in this CSS directory. So we're going to be writing all of our styles in there. So the first thing I'm going to do, because this percentage bar is going to take up 100% of the width of any container that it's placed within, I'm going to create a wrapper on my page. So we've got a div with a class of wrapper, and that's going to go inside of there. Obviously, this progress bar is going to be placed anywhere on your page. So we'll just fill the contents basically. So let's just quickly create styles for this. This isn't actually part of the progress bar. It's just an example. So we've got a 500 pixel wrapper. So now what we want to do is just look at the markup for this. So I'm going to create a div with a class of progress bar. And then inside of here, I'm going to create a span with a class of progress bar fill. So progress bar fill. There we go. So a span with the class of progress bar fill. We don't need to pull this down onto another line. We can just keep it here. Of course, there's not going to be any text in here either. So now that we've got this, we obviously have nothing on the page. We just have the markup here, so we can play around with this now. Developer tools if we want to. But let's go ahead and style the outer shell. So that's this progress bar class. So let's go ahead and say progress bar. And the styles that we're going to enter into here are, we want it 100% of the width. Remember I said that it's going to fill 100% of whichever container it's in. We're going to give this a background color as well. Obviously these colors are entirely up to you, but I'm going to write the ones that we saw in the example a minute ago. So for this case it's E0, 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 which is a gray color. We're also going to give this a little bit of padding. So we're going to give it 3 pixel padding because we don't want the fill to go to right to the edges of this container. And then we're going to give it a border radius of 3 pixels. So that just rounds out the borders. So you can see here, if I just zoom in, we've just basically got a grey rectangle, I guess, with border radius on there. But we can do a little bit better than this. So we're going to add a box shadow. That's going to give it a nice shadow in there, make it look inset, and just adds to the effect of this. Of course, you don't have to do this if you're going for a more flat look. So we're going to have a box shadow. We're going to use inset here to say it's going to be an inset shadow. We're going to say 0 pixels on the x-axis, 1 pixel on the y-axis, and we're going to have a 3 pixel spread. That's just how much this shadow spreads out. And then we need to choose a shadow color. In this case, I'm going to use the RGBA function. So it's red, green, and blue, and then an alpha channel as well. All this allows us to do is say 0, 0, 0 for black and then 0.2 for the alpha channel. So we have some opacity here. So now when I refresh, you can see if we zoom in, we've got this nice inset looking thing. So it makes it look a little bit more real, if you like. So we're now going to focus on this progress bar fill span. Now the reason I've created this as a span is because it's not a real element. We want the progress bar to act as sort of a real element on the page, and the span is just not really that relevant. So we've chose a span. You can give this an element type of div if you really want to. So let's say progress bar fill. Now we need to give this a height, so I'm just going to give it, say, 22 pixels. You can do whatever you want. Let's give this a background color as well. I'm going to give this a background color of 659 CEF, which is the same as cornflower blue. It's quite a nice blue color, so we can already check out how this is looking. Well, we can't actually see it at the moment. The reason being is that we don't have a display of block on this. So display block, that's just because it's a span element. So when I refresh here, you can see this has filled the entire container by default because we don't have a predefined width on it. So what we could do is, to start with, we could always give this a width of 0, so it's always at the start. But I'm going to assume you're going to be controlling this either by saying style equals and then giving it a percentage width, or defining that within CSS. But like I said before, you probably wouldn't define this within CSS because you'll probably be using JavaScript to control this, or just outputting this onto the page. So we've got a width of 30%. Obviously, that's just going to give us an exact percentage here because we have 100% width here. But now let's take a look at just adding to this. So we'll say border radius of 3 pixels to match the outside border radius. So that just rounds off the edges a little bit more, so it looks a little bit nicer. And finally, we're going to add our transition. So at the moment, if I change this width to say 60 or whatever %, it just jumps straight up. If you are constantly updating this value, you might want a little bit of animation in there just to make it look a little bit smoother. So I'm going to say transition, and we're going to transition on the width. So this allows us to basically say when the width changes, we want to transition this. Now we choose our animation properties. So we're going to say we want the animation to last 500 milliseconds. This can be anything. You could have 1 second if you want, whatever you want. I found 500 milliseconds works nicely. And then we choose the transition type, and that's ease in, out. You can have anything you want here. So you can have ease in, you can have linear, it's entirely up to you, but I think ease in, out for a progress bar does look quite nice. So we've got our styles done. Let's just test out this transition. So let's say you are uploading a file with JavaScript and you're constantly uploading this percentage value. If we go to 50, you can see that animates nicely. If we go all the way to 100, we now have a nice animated progress bar with CSS.